And if let me tell you a story. Not from this book. This is just a Halo book. It's called a prop. So the date today is Tuesday, 26th of May, 2020. My name is Dave and I'm here to talk about a story I heard and learned something from, but a story I enjoyed. Now personally, I like to think of my life as a story. One long continuous story with many chapters. Of course, to what extent you write your own story and what extent you have it written for you is a discussion for another day. I have already actually discussed that up here. And being an introspective individual that I am, I like to look back at my story and at the story currently. I like to theorise about where it's going. However, I also like to look back at what's happened and learn from the things that have happened to me or to those around me. I'm talking about this because I can't actually think of anything recently that I've read or watched or listened to that has then taught me a lesson. But as mentioned, I can look at stuff in my own past, the lessons I've learned from it, and probably talk about those because they were pretty interesting and have led to, well, me. Some of my favourite stories have happened to me and that I've shared in the past are things that have started from really small beginnings or started from a place you wouldn't expect to lead to something completely different. For instance, I became really good friends with someone on Twitter as a result of a single tweet that I responded to one of theirs because I thought it was quite amusing, but I've never really interacted with them before. And 3 years later, we've done a whole bunch of stuff in different countries together. Or how this channel itself started off as a failed informational channel for nerdfighters from the Nerdfighters Ning, and then changed to a couple of people starting a collab channel. And then 6-7 years later, here I am, still stood talking on it, with conversation from over 100 people across the world over those 7 years. So that's a small thing becomes something huge. Or how one single, although accidentally well-placed message led to me moderating on the Ning, which then snowballed everything I've done so far, up to working with Ashens and managing communities and making a pseudo career out of it on the side. But I think out of all these things, I've just learned to not take the small things for granted. The longest journey starts with the smallest step, and I think that is important to remember when embarking on any sort of decision or new venture, or even if it's talking to someone for the very first time. I always say when I get asked about networking and how to improve networking skills, never open up throwing a lot of stuff at someone. Small, start casual, and just start easy. When it comes to networking, there is always a feeling out process between yourself and any other parties involved, because they want to learn about you, you want to learn about them, both what they can offer you, what you can offer them, what mutually you can benefit from. Discussion, a partnership, a friendship, anything like that. And of course, immediately trying to come on too strong to make a good impression often makes the worst impressions. Start small. I really like that phrase, the longest journey starts with the smallest steps. I suppose apart from that, something else that I learned from a story that happened to myself was when I was going to VidCon for the first time back in 2016. I'd arranged to go with someone else. We'd made this whole trip out of it, starting in Chicago, then going across to LA, and that other person just pulled out. And not just pulled out, they went silent, they went dark, and that nearly ruined my whole trip. So of course, aside from being concerned why this person had dropped out of existence as far as me and several other people were concerned, I also didn't know how anything was going to work because I'd budgeted everything based on 2 people. And honestly, in my mind at the time, I just thought it's best to cancel because too much has gone up in the air 2 weeks before I'm supposed to fly across the Atlantic, so I should probably just leave it and go another year. But then considering the amount of arrangements and money I'd already laid out to do this thing, it almost seems stupid not to, but it also seems stupid to do it. But in the end, I took the leap of faith and had a trip of a lifetime. I learned that sometimes taking risks is not entirely a bad thing, as long as they are risks in which you can see one of 2 possible outcomes and you can plan ahead for those outcomes, which I did. On that bombshell, I'm going to take a step towards ending this video. So thank you very much for watching. Mr. Posh Jerry will see you tomorrow, and I'll see you next week, NFI. Life is a story. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Sometimes it could stretch over several volumes, or it could be a short novel. Of course, this is dictated by the length of time one person exists in this world, and also by the storytelling acumen of the one telling it. Often you have to take yourself out of your place in the narrative and look at